Well, hey y'all, hey, how you doing today? Hopefully your day is filled with goodness and joy and happiness as we continue on our path of Happy White History Month. And how do white people solve their problems? Rioting and more rioting. Well, we're picking up on number 86, the Charleston, South Carolina race riot of 1919. Then we're going to take it to number 87, the Chicago race riot. And then number 88, the Detroit race riot. This one's the one before 1967, which is I've already read because I read the Toledo ones. That was on a few videos ago. All right, now let's get it started. I called my partner in crime to see if they was coming to do some church announcements, but I don't know what they on, so we'll see if they show up. My auntie was saying something about she found out something about one of her friends and ain't nobody told her nothing. That's what she just kept saying. Ain't nobody told her nothing about one of her friends. I don't know what's going on with that. Y'all keep my auntie in your prayers. And, she told me she might come. She might not because she is mad because ain't nobody told her nothing. Okay, so Charleston, South Carolina race riot, 1919. Report 6 killed in Sailor Negro riot. Other persons are wounded, 8 severely in a race clash at Charleston, South Carolina. The race riot of Charleston, South Carolina in 1919 was a part of a series of race riots that year known as the Red Summer. The migration of blacks out of South, the end of World War I, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, the illness and near incapacity of President Woodrow Wilson, and the 1918 influenza epidemic that killed more than 600,000 in the United States led to widespread social instability. These events led to fears of social and political upheaval, which contributed to racial tensions and violence as whites sought scapegoats. As whites sought scapegoats and blacks, emboldened by their own progress, sought to defend their rights. At the time, Charleston, at the time, the riot, Charleston was a city of 80,000, more than half of whom were black. On the evening of May 10th, 1919, a black man allegedly pushed Roscoe Coleman, a white Navy sailor, off the sidewalk. A white crowd of sailors and civilians gave chase to the man, who had escaped to a nearby house. A scuffle ensued where both sides threw bricks, bottles, and stones until 4 shots were fired into the air by a black man to disperse the crowd. Rumors immediately began to circulate of a sailor shot by a Negro. Rioting by white sailors, civilians, and a few soldiers and Marines soon began. The multiplicity of the crowd makeup adding further chaos and hysteria to the scene. A mob of sailors stole rifles from nearby gun clubs and began shooting blacks indiscriminately while robbing and vandalizing black-owned businesses along the way. Blacks fought back using firearms of their own. The rioting continued until around 3 a.m. when Charleston's mayor requested a detachment of U.S. Marines to restore order. In all, 5 white men and 18 black men were seriously injured, and 3 black men, William Brown, Isaac Doctor, and James Talbot, died of gunshot wounds. All over rumors. All over rumors. So in judgment ain't gonna be like, well, we heard, well, we thought that a black man shot a sailor. That's bad. Well, you were lied to, and you believed that, and you went and you stole guns first. You stole guns from a business to go commit crimes. All over a rumor. The subsequent Navy investigation stands as one of the very few official documents regarding white racial violence during the era where the white perpetrators were named and their crimes identified. The report found sailors Ralph Stone, bitch ass, George W. Biggs, pale faced demon ass, Roscoe Coleman, old Neanderthal cave dwelling ass, Robert Morton, his genetic mutated ass, and white civilian resident Alexander Laniau, another cave, monkey lip, Neanderthal, pale face, demon, sunburnt skin, devil ass, cracker, honky, were responsible for stirring up strife and inciting others to violence against the Negroes. In addition, it found Jacob Cohen, also known as con men, a white supremacist, and George T. Holliday, another cracker white supremacist, both of whom are disgraceful sailors, jointly responsible for the death of Isaac Doctor. Finally, it declared that all property damage, save a pool room, and all injuries to Negro men was caused by the unlawful actions of cracker mobs, which in all cases were comprised principally of ferry sailors. You know what they say about them sailors? And then to my black sailors, no disrespect to you. I'm no disrespect to you. But fuck your cracker friends. I don't give a fuck. However, typical of white mob violence in the United States at the time, very little punishment was meted out. Of course. Despite the thorough and objective investigation, was it thorough? Was it thorough if very little punishment was given out? Was it thorough? I don't think so. An objective investigation and its naming of culprits, and despite the Navy's full authority to hand out harsh sentences, then standard for misconduct, Conhan and Holliday received only 1 year in military prison as punishment, and no other sailors, soldiers, Marines, or civilians were convicted of any unlawful acts. That's why you're about to get your asses handed to you. That's why you're about to get your asses handed to you. Oh, yes. I want you to look at this bullshit. Remember, this is what you signed up for. This is what you signed up for. When you get your asses handed to you. This is what you signed up for. This is why he said he knew that he's not getting into heaven. Now we see why today, right? It's all coming full circle. But this is what you signed up for, white folk. Until you 21% of dumbass black men that voted for, I think it was 21%. Now I'm hoping I'm wrong on that number, but I think it was 21%. I think it was 19. But this is what you voted for. This is what you voted for. Right here. Bases, more than 30 military bases told troops the Iran war is part of God's plan and linked to Armageddon. A commander said Trump was anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon. This is what you signed up for. And you just remember, when UFOs start popping up out of the sky, bitch, you better run. Cause that's not Iran. That ain't Iran. Bitch, you better run. That's not Iran. You fire on them if you want to, and you are going to regret that for eternity. Okay? You get me? You get where I'm going. If you see anything just fucking pop up out of the sky and it's disc shaped or anything that looks like a UFO, that ain't Iran. You better run. Land the plane, land the jet, and bitch, you better take cover. Cause that's not Iran. You better run when you see that. Because I'm telling you, when the Battle of Armageddon come, these people, they think that they are going to see. Look, they think they're gonna start out fighting each other, right? Okay, so they're gonna start out. I'm just throwing names out there, like for instance, Russia and China. They're gonna start out fighting each other. And no, I'm not saying that Russia and China is gonna do. I'm just using names as an example. Okay, they're gonna start out fighting, right? And next thing you know, some unknown force is going to enter into the playing field here. And next thing you know, those that was fighting before that unknown force, and they're going to stop fighting each other and try to fight this force. I'm telling you, you best not do that, because you will regret it for eternity. This right here is Obadiah. Obadiah. You need to read it. Look at this bullshit. Look at this. This man does not believe in the Bible at all. Look at how the cape draped around him, the cross, calling himself a chosen one when he is the total opposite. Oh, you was chosen, all right. You was chosen by Satan. You was chosen by Satan. I told you, maggots. He leading you straight to hell. And you think you gonna be a Marjorie, you think you gonna Marjorie Taylor Greene your ass out of this. And you're not. You're not. Nope. You're not. You already made your choice. You chose this.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
What in the Wakanda for colonizer hell is going on up in here? Oh, I get it. She had the good credit for him to open up this dance studio. Baby, thank you for tuning in to Save the Last Dance African Edition. Let's see that again. I like her.
I just want y'all to know that I found out
her braids is fly.
That the lady in the video is the wife of the man who teaching the class. I just want y'all to know that the man that's teaching the class is married to the white lady in the video. Go to hell. Go to hell, okay?
Baby, I'm telling you, I will talk about the women going, but you men, and y'all be letting these cracker ass Karens do shit like this. This bitch doing an African skedaddle. When African dance meets Irish tap dancing. She doing an Africanish dance right here. We're going to continue on in a minute here, but I just thought I had to get this out of the way. There will come a day when the people in your church will demand answers. And I'm talking about to you black pastors and church leadership. There will come a day when the people in your church will demand answers to why there has not been a rapture, and some will demand all the money that they put into this raggedy motherfucker. That's what I heard in my dream. Their words, not mine. Also, there were some very genuinely hurt people who lost their faith after all of this. The blood will be on these leaders' hands. Anyways, more Esau news. So, what is the... I'm showing you the scriptures. Oh, yeah. See, I bring the scriptures to show what I'm talking about. And you can read that on your own. But all white people are not going to hell. Doesn't bother me if y'all did though. But the scriptures don't say all of Esau, white people, is going to hell. This is the difference between me, other Israelites, and myself. I will talk about you. I may even shade the fuck out of you. But vengeance is the Lord's. I cannot stress that enough. There's no radicalism over here. Vengeance is the Lord's, and we are seeing it play out. Israelite brothers who are out here letting white people kiss their boots are out of order. All Israelites do not follow the same doctrine. For example, I follow the doctrine of Christ. Others only follow the Old Testament. Having anyone kiss my boots when I have yet to kiss the boots of Christ is wrong. Avoid any Israelites wearing a Jewish star. And I say that because they think it's the Star of David, and it's not. It's the Star of Molech. And many of them have been told this. But hey, like I said, we're going to see in the end. Just like I say with the Church of Garbage and Crisis, and Pentecostal, and Baptiste, we're going to see in the end. There will be a very, 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 very small remnant of white people who will make it into the kingdom of Christ to be servants, non-whips and chains. And I give you the scriptures. So what is all this in response to all these pictures? Oh, okay. See? This, and I just shared this 48 minutes ago. This right here, blasphemy. This man don't even believe in the Bible. I've shown you time and time again, Obadiah. Dump even said himself that he was not heaven bound. And after recent events, I think we're starting to see why. Yeah, who uses the ego? Yeah. See, a lot of Americans, they think that, America is, the same as it was, some time ago. And just like it's people over in Israel right now, they thought that Iron Dome was going to be something, significant, and, nothing is going to be able to stop that and break through. That's the Iron Dome. She'll never sink. She'll never sink. And where's that bitch at? At the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. 2 planes going into... That'll never happen. What happened? They'll never get through this. This is the Iron Dome. Oh, okay. Well, let's see. Let's see how iron it is.
To listen to some footage obtained exclusively by CBC of a missile strike in central Tel Aviv the other night. What you see is an attempt of the anti-missile defense system to reach that missile, but it breaks through those defenses. It's been cleaned up. There was a hole right here on the street. There was a building right there that's already been brought down. They can clean up. What is a little harder to deal with is the knock to the confidence of seeing a missile break through the defense system. You sometimes hear about the Iron Dome. Well, the Iron Dome is just sort of one layer of the onion, if you will, to the defense system here. There's something called the David Sling, the Arrow 1, Arrow 2. As you go deeper into that layer,
the Most High is going to break all of those. Okay? All of those. Just what you're seeing right here, right now, eventually it's going to make its way here.
they can hit more complicated and bigger missiles coming through. If they are overwhelmed, it's inevitable that a few break through. The Israelis have seen that happen before. This is a brand new feeling for the Gulf states, though, who are encountering the drones and the missile strikes for Iran over the last 72 hours. Some of those are breaking through their defenses as well. And lots of questions are being asked about the capabilities to intercept incoming missiles from Iran. It's not just can they all break through, it's how long can interceptions continue to happen? They are extremely expensive. You're talking millions and millions of dollars. Is there enough money? Are there enough interceptors?
No, and no. And do you know that these, the people of Iran, they're sending thousands of missiles. Like, they've been waiting on this day to happen. They've been waiting years for this one event. That's what it would make you think. They dropping thousands of missiles. They're not gonna be able to intercept them all. You just wait. You just wait. And they're destroying all the bases.
Countries you are seeing have already been pushed toward a major war. On one side, America and Israel have been continuously bombing Iran for the past 48 hours. On the other side, Iran, in response, is targeting American military bases in the Middle East with ballistic missiles and drones. Shocking news has also emerged that there are fears this war could reach Europe. A UK military base in Cyprus has reportedly been targeted by a drone, and there are reports of damage. At the same time, Israel has started targeting Lebanon as well, and rockets have been fired from Lebanon toward Israel. In Yemen, the Houthis have announced their support for Iran. Meanwhile, conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan is also ongoing. Pakistan is reportedly moving 25 to 30 kilometers inside Afghanistan to take control of certain areas and create a buffer zone so that suicide attackers cannot enter Pakistan from Afghanistan. And the third war between Russia and Ukraine has already turned into a highly dangerous conflict. Russia continues to target Ukraine with drones and missiles. The war is expanding moment by moment, and even a small mistake could push it toward a world war.
Baby, we are in a world war. What do we need? Just for China to come in next? And then will that officially make it a world war? Because, I mean, everybody fighting. And I'm only doing this right now because this is in real time. And I have been talking about this for years. And I have to give credit where it's due. I'm not affiliated with anyone, but I have to give credit where it's due. The first place where I heard this was from Elder Ricard Shiar of the Gathering of Christ Church. Not affiliated with them, but I have been following them and their teachings for years. And I believe in them. I was watching a video where he said he don't, he just a man, or said something like he just a man, and like, well, that man is like Moses to me. Like, I learned a lot from him, and I have to give credit to where it's due. I'm not affiliated with them, and I wish them all the best, and But we are seeing this come to pass. And I remember I told him, see, my uncle was my pastor when I was a little boy and I was coming up into adulthood. He was the pastor of my church. And right when I came into the truth, I told him that we are on the brink of seeing Christ come back. And this was 2015. This was 2015 when I told him this. 2014, 2015, one of the two. But I remember telling him, and look where we at today. Look, I said this in 2018. So I love my receipts. I said this 9 years ago, 2017, August 28th, 2017. I said this. Isaiah 13, 1 through 22. And then Revelation 18, 1 through 24. Jeremiah 50, 1 through 46. 2018. I keep saying Iran will be the one to watch out for. I told y'all. But hey, Little John don't know what he talking about. Looks like I'm not so crazy after all. Booyah! This was 2016. Okay? This August will be 10 years ago. I said this. I told you. I love receipts. All right, so the Chicago Race Riot 1919. So let's take a look here. On July 27th, 1919, when large crowds of white and black patrons went to the Lake Michigan beach in Chicago, Illinois to seek relief from the 96-degree heat, an angry dispute erupted over the stoning of Eugene Williams, a young black American swimmer who inadvertently crossed the segregated boundary into the white swimming area. White beachgoers hailed stones at the young man, causing him to drown. When police refused to arrest any whites who were accused by black bystanders of having thrown stones, and instead arrested a black beachgoer on a white complaint of some minor offense, the blacks began to attack the white policemen. Reports of the incident spread throughout Chicago, igniting a clash of white and black rioters across the city's south side. Across the city's what? See, that's why that area is the spiritual, man. The spiritual rage from all of these events like this still lingers in these areas. This incident released years of accumulated racial tensions. Do you think these tensions went away? No, because they're spiritual. They're still here. Starting from a constricting job market and the efforts by Chicago Black Americans to secure adequate housing by moving into previously all-white neighborhoods as thousands of Black Americans began arriving in the city during World War I as part of what would be called the Great Migration. For 7 days, bloodshed was rampant on the streets of Chicago. Many Black Americans became victims of white mobs when they had to pass through white neighborhoods in order to reach their workplaces. Others were attacked on street cars or in the city parks and other public venues. The majority of the rioting and violence was concentrated in the Black Belt section, the predominantly Black neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago. At the height of the rioting, over 4/5 of Chicago's 3,500 police officers had been sent to control the angry crowds. Many Blacks stayed home fearing mob violence. They often were not safe there as white mobs began to torch houses in Black American neighborhoods. Blacks fought back. Often gangs of men attacked and stabbed white civilians. So, are you your ancestors or not? Okay. But white rioters had superiority in numbers and firepower, and in many cases, the sympathy of the police. Yeah, the latter is the biggest one. See, that's the biggest one. Remove that, don't even matter about their firepower, because we have the Most High. By the end of the violence, 23 Blacks and 15 whites died, with more than 500 people injured and about 1,000 people left homeless. Okay, so we just did number 87. Now we on to number 88 and 89, the Detroit Race Riot of 1943 and the East St. Louis Race Riot of 1917. And here we go. I've talked about this before in the past. I've shared pictures like this. You know, this is horrible. Horrible. That's okay. This time around, I'm telling you, this fight that's gonna come, that's about to go. You remember what happened on Friday, right? To Debo in the end of Friday, right? Well, you better get ready, because that's what's about to happen. I already told y'all who Debo was. The Detroit riot of 1943 lasted only about 24 hours, from 10:30 on June 20th to 11 o'clock p.m. on June 21st. Nonetheless, it was considered one of the worst riots during World War II era. Several contributing factors revolved around the police brutality and the sudden influx of Black migrants from the South into the city, lured by the promise of jobs in defense plants. The migrants faced an acute housing shortage that many thought would be reduced by the construction of public housing. However, the construction of public housing for Blacks in predominantly white neighborhoods often created racial tension.
They named it after Sojourner Truth, a woman who fought her whole life for freedom. And in 1942, when Black families tried to move into the homes carrying her name, Detroit showed them exactly what America does when we try to claim space that we've already earned. So World War II was in full swing. Factories in Detroit were working around the clock, building machines that would defend democracy. And Black workers were brought in to fill the labor gap. But when it came to housing, suddenly democracy had a gatekeeper. The federal government built the Sojourner Truth homes for Black war workers. Affordable, decent housing, a chance at stability. White residents nearly lost their minds.
They organized, protested, and flooded city officials with letters. They demanded that no black families be allowed in. But it wasn't just white folks. Even some wealthier black residents didn't want working-class black families moving in next door. So February 28, 1942, the first black families tried to move in. And they were met with a mob, hundreds deep. People screaming slurs, throwing things, waving signs. A cross was burned in that neighborhood as a warning. And police showed up, but not to protect the new tenants. By the end of the day, 40 people were injured, 220 arrested, 109 of them were put on trial. And of course, most of them were black. They even called in the National Guard just to get those families home safely. You'd think a moment like this would lead to more protection, more justice. Instead, Detroit's Housing Commission adopted a new policy. From now on, public housing would never change the racial pattern of a neighborhood. Translation: segregation written into housing policies, cemented in place. This wasn't about one housing project, right? It was a message. You can work here, you can build for us, you can fight our wars, but don't you dare try to live next door to us. How odd, because they named that housing project after Sojourner Truth.
1890, 1920, probably over 30 or 40 years, the 20s. In 1890, 1920, probably over 30 or 40 years, the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. I'm Ken Coleman, a Detroit-based author. In 1942, at the height of the Second World War, federal officials sought to build a housing development that would house families of men and women who were fighting overseas. They chose to put one of the developments here, the Sojourner Truth Homes. It was originally designed for African American families only. Well, that didn't set well with the neighboring community that was largely white, and they began to protest city officials about why a housing development for blacks was being built in their neighborhood. The city officials heard the white neighbors and changed their minds. They actually decided to make it a housing project for white families. Well, that upset the African American community. In February of 1942, African Americans did move into the Sojourner Truth Homes, but it wasn't without a fight. African Americans were faced with picketers who happened to be white, who would not allow African Americans to move into the site. Federal and local officials began to move into the community and escort African Americans into their new homes, but the issue would cause a reverberation throughout the city in terms of when new public housing was built, would it be in white communities or in black communities? Would it be for whites or would it be for blacks? Over the last 70 some odd years, the Sojourner Truth Homes have been a housing site for Detroiters. Over the years, the structures have changed, the buildings have changed, but the site has remained a federally funded public housing project, and it still operates, as you can see here today.
Yes, Detroit. I love you, Detroit. I do. I love Detroit. I love Detroit. And I'm not gaslighting. I am not bullshitting. I love Detroit. Okay? Like I said, I'm from Toledo, Ohio. And so Detroit is in our backyard. You know, I remember being a child, with my family, going up I-75, listening to BB and CC Winans, Addicted Love, or I'll take you there. That song, Taking It Back. And so we will always go up to Detroit because Toledo did not have a Church's Chicken. So after church on Sunday, we will go up to Detroit, me and my family. And, well, my family and I, because, I was a child. And then also, we would come up to Detroit because my dad, he would buy Croc and Gator shoes from Mr. Allen's. And so we would come up to Detroit all the time. I love Detroit. Detroit is like Gotham City to me, I don't know, through the good times, the bad times, you know, man, it's like, okay, I'm gonna put it to you like this. I done been like a lot of places in the United States, right? But it's something about Detroit, man. You could be outside, like it's just like, even though like I'm telling you, it's been times where we was just outside up in Detroit kicking it. You know, this house has been torn down, this house torn down, you know, but we all somehow done met up, you know, in this group, and we just, you know, everybody, you know, partying and drinking and smoking and, you know, just chilling, having a good time. And those are the times that I cling to when I think about, you know, Detroit. And RIP to Goddess Rodeo. Um, you know, and it was good times. And so, you know, I would come up to Detroit, you know, when I was 16, and I would start partying and going out, and you know, and I would be at the park and just having fun, and I had some good times. So I love Detroit. Um, I love Motown music. You know, what Barry Gordy did, and with Motown, and you know, Smokey Robinson, Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, um, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Smokey Robinson, and you know, I mean, all the acts. I mean, that was real music. You know, a lot of greatness came out of Detroit, and I'm telling you, you want some good food? That area, from Toledo all the way up to Detroit, that area, that's 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 where the cooks is, baby. Them people can cook. I can cook. Okay? So I'm telling you, people from the South moved up north. So yeah, you know, Detroit is a vibe. Um, you know, it's sad to see what, these folks have done to it. You know, but Detroit, aka Gotham City, you know, they have a historically black college, Wayne State University. Um, we would always, because I'm from Toledo, so we would have to go to Detroit to fly out. You know, we would have to go to Romulus, to the airport to fly out. And so, I mean, you could fly out from Toledo, but they're going to fly you right to Detroit, and then you have to change planes. So you might as well just go ahead, drive that 45 minutes up there, or have somebody drop you off. Oh, and I cannot forget to mention the Clark sisters, because I do love the Clark sisters. Even though I talk about Church of God in Christ, I love the Clark sisters and Maddie Moss Clark. You know, the music and the praise, it has nothing to do when I'm talking about the doctrine. You know, because the music department and the praise, that's right. You know, but when we start to get into the church, the doctrine, and what's going on within that institution, what's going on within that institution, how, you know, some of them is not trying to, but taking people's churches, you know, through paperwork and fine print and all of that. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. But anyway, that is uh the Sojourner Truth Homes. And the Sojourner Truth also has a newspaper as well. They also have a newspaper. I don't know if this is still running or not, but I'm from Toledo. And in Toledo, we will have the Toledo Journal. the Toledo Journal. And I believe Toledo Journal was black owned and operated. And I believe so.
Yes, the Toledo Journal is a black owned and operated newspaper. It's the oldest African American owned weekly in Northwest Ohio, serving the community since 1975. It's also a member of the National Newspaper Publishers Association.
Love Toledo Journal. This is Toledo Journal. So yes, they have the Sojourner Truth has a newspaper as well. I would always see them like kind of together, but they're not. They're separate. But I would always see it around coming up when I was younger. But anyway, the Sojourner Truth Homes riot in 1942, for example, began when whites were enraged by the opening of that project in their neighborhood. Mobs attempted to keep the black residents from moving into their new homes. That confrontation laid the foundation for the much larger riot 1 year later. On June 20th, a warm Saturday evening, a fistfight broke out between a black man and a white man at the sprawling Belle Isle amusement park in Detroit. Belle Isle. Belle Isle. Man, that was Belle Isle, man. Good times. Good times. One way on, one way off. That bridge that you got to drive on. The brawl eventually grew into a confrontation between groups of blacks and whites and then spilled into the city. Stores were looted and buildings were burned in the riot, most of which were located in a black neighborhood. The riot took place in an area of roughly 2 miles in and around Paradise Valley, one of the oldest and poorest neighborhoods in Detroit, Michigan. As the violence escalated, both blacks and whites engaged in violence. Blacks dragged whites out of cars and looted white-owned stores in Paradise Valley, while whites overturned and burned black-owned vehicles and attacked black Americans on streetcars along Woodward Avenue and other major streets. Man, Woodward, Grand River. And I think they're the only ones that got like 6 mile, 7 mile, 8 mile, 9 mile, But Joy Road, the Lodge Freeway. Man, I used to have some good times in Detroit. I gotta stop thinking about it because I am just. The Detroit police did little in the rioting. I mean, well, that ain't nothing new because y'all police don't do nothing now. I'm just playing because on the last video, I never forget, man. The police. I love Detroit police. I don't have the same views about Detroit police as I do my own home city's police. But because I never forget, we was up in Detroit, me and some friends of mine, and I was just talking to these 2 black officers, and they were so cool. They were so cool and funny, and the black officer was like, the black guy was like, he was like, I know y'all ain't talking about Detroit police officers. He's like, shit, y'all police officers even worse. I was like, how you know about our police officers? But yeah, no, they was cool though. I remember them being cool. But yeah, it says the Detroit police did little in the rioting, often siding with the white rioters in the violence. Yeah, so them was some different type of Detroit police. These ain't the same Detroit police that I'm talking about. The violence ended only after President Franklin Roosevelt, at the request of Detroit Mayor Edward Jeffries Jr., ordered 6,000 federal troops into the city. 25 blacks and 9 whites were killed in the violence. Of the 25 black Americans who died, 17 were killed by the police. Wow. The police claimed that these shootings were justified since the victims were engaged in looting stores on Hastings Street. Of the 9 whites who died, none were killed by the police. The city suffered an estimated $2 million in property damages. All right, so this is the East St. Louis race riot, 1917. And East St. Louis is a place you do not want to fuck around in. Shit, I remember one time, I was dropping one of my former classmates off. Rest in peace to Demetrius Booker. Michi, that's what we called him. Rest in peace. And we hung out, like it was a group of us, and we went to a club there one time, man, and it was unreal. But you could definitely tell it's a place that does not play around. I felt like I was in Outworld in Mortal Kombat. We went to this club, man, and it was interesting. That's all I'll say. Anyway, East St. Louis race riot, 1917. The city of East St. Louis, Illinois, was the scene of one of the bloodiest race riots in the 20th century. Okay, so more context. Racial tensions began to increase in February 1917 when 470 black American workers were hired to replace white workers who had gone on strike against the aluminum ore company. The violence started on May 28, 1917, shortly after a city council meeting was called. Angry white workers lodged formal complaints against black migrations to the mayor of East St. Louis. After the meeting had ended, news of an attempted robbery of a white man by an armed black man began to circulate through the city. As a result of this news, white mobs formed and rampaged through downtown. Of course, beating all black Americans who were found. Of course. Do you think that there was any robbery? Probably not. The mobs also stopped trolleys and streetcars, pulling black passengers out and beating them on the streets and sidewalks. Illinois Governor Frank O. Loudon eventually called the National Guard to quell the violence, and the mobs slowly dispersed. The May 28th disturbances were only a prelude to the violence that erupted on July 2nd, 1917. After the May 28th riots, little was done to prevent any further problems, of course. No precautions were taken to ensure white job security or to grant union recognition. Of course, these people who get mad, they're not going to do anything on their end. No, they just feel that they should have to take their stupid asses outside and strike. I just never agree with none of this shit. Like none of that shit. That striking shit, I just never agree with it. Nope. It's like you want something done, then go after the people that's mistreating you. You know, why get mad at, the next person who trying to, get a job? Then deal with the people that's mistreating you. But that will be too much, right? That will be too hard for them. So it's easier to just take it out on black people. So no precautions were taken to ensure white job security or to grant union recognition. This further increased the already high level of hostilities toward Black Americans. Ain't that crazy? So where in this is it the Black Americans' responsibility to ensure white job security or to grant union recognition? You know what you know what a good way to avoid this problem would have been was to leave black people in Africa. That's would have been a good head start for you. Oh, but you couldn't do your labor on your own. Because like degenerate people that you are, you need a little head start. And even then, when you get the head start, you still can't manage shit right. You still can't do shit right. You've had a 400-year head start. And look at this shithole that we in now. The stuff that was built for us has been destroyed pretty much by y'all. Because see, y'all like to have shit built and then you want to come in. Then you want to come in. After it's built, you want to come in to manage. All you've done since this country has been established is prove that y'all are not fit to be leaders. You're not as intelligent as you led on to believe. You damn sure aren't athletic or builders of anything. Not in of pretty much anything like in history. I mean, like that matters. No, you know how to do war. That's what you know how to do. You know how to do war, you know how to steal, you know how to SA, you know how to pillage, you know how to loot, you know how to organize to loot and rob. Like, these people wouldn't be taking your jobs had you would have left them alone. But at one point in time, you couldn't do your job. That's why you had to go get another people to do it for you. On land that is not yours. That you never paid for. You broke over 500 treaties for. You gave the people blankets with smallpox on them. But then you want to turn around and say your founding fathers were Christian. Well, I guess the good old Christian way is giving another people blankets with smallpox on them. Good old germ warfare, the American way. And if you weren't given the blankets, you was sneezing on people, giving them your nasty ass germs and diseases. Anyway, no reforms were made in police force, which did little to quell the violence. In May, Governor Loudon ordered the National Guard out of the city on June 10th, leaving residents of East St. Louis in an uneasy state of high racial tension. Of course, on July 2nd, 1917, the violence resumed. Men, women, and children were beaten and shot to death. Around 6 o'clock that evening, white mobs began to set fire to the homes of black residents. Residents had to choose between burning alive in their homes or run out of the burning houses, only to be met by gunfire. In other parts of the city, white mobs began to lynch black Americans against the backdrop of burning buildings. As darkness came and the National Guard returned, the violence began to wane, but did not come to a complete stop. In response to the rioting, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, sent Webb Du Bois and Martha Gruening to investigate the incident. What's there to investigate? They compiled a report entitled Massacre at East St. Louis, which was published in the NAACP's magazine, The Crisis. The NAACP also staged a silent protest march in New York City in response to the violence. Thousands of well-dressed, of course, black Americans marched down Fifth Avenue showing their concern about the events in East St. Louis. The Universal Negro Improvement Association also responded to the violence. On July 8th, 1917, the UNIA president, Marcus Garvey, said, "This is a crime against the laws of humanity. It is a crime against the laws of the nation. It is a crime against nature and a crime against the God of all mankind." He also believed that the entire riot was a part of a larger conspiracy against Black Americans who migrated north in search for a better life. "The whole thing, my friend, is a bloody farce, and the police and soldiers did nothing to stem the murder thirst of the mob. Is a conspiracy on the part of the civil authorities to condone the acts of the white mob against the Negroes." A year after the riot, a special committee formed by the United States House of Representatives launched an investigation into police actions during the East St. Louis riots. Investigators found that the National Guard and also the East St. Louis police force had not acted adequately during the riots. Oh, no shit, Sherlock. Oh, for real? How long did it take you to figure that out? Revealing that the police often fled from the scenes of murder. Well, some even fled from station houses and refused to answer calls for help. Really? Really? You don't say. The investigation resulted in the indictment of several members of the East St. Louis police force. Damn. Wow. So they had to that's pretty bad. If it was so blatant that they had to arrest these people, wow. It's crazy.
The Universal Negro Improvement Association, or UNIA, was a Black nationalist group. Founded by Marcus Garvey in 1914, it promoted racial pride, economic independence, and Pan-African unity. It also supported the Back to Africa movement, aiming for an independent Black nation, and became a large global movement.
All right, so we have the Elaine, Arkansas riot, 1919. And I did come across this on Facebook, so I wanted to share this. This is from Unseen Black History. They met in a church to ask for fair pay. Arkansas answered with gunfire, mass graves, death sentences. But their names reached the Supreme Court and refused to die. There are stories in this country that sit just beneath the surface, heavy, unspoken, deliberately blurred. This is one of them. In 1919, in the cotton fields of Elaine, Arkansas, Black sharecroppers gathered inside a small church. They were not planning a rebellion. They were not plotting violence. They were doing something far more dangerous in Jim Crow America. They were asking to be paid fairly, and for that the state answered with blood. Slavery by another name. The Civil War had ended. The chains were gone, but the plantation never really died. It just changed clothes. Sharecropping was presented as an opportunity. Black families would work land, split profits, build something of their own. But the landowners controlled the books. They decided the price of the cotton. They decided the cost of seed. They decided the value of labor. And every year, somehow, the ledger said the same thing. You still owe. Imagine working sun up to sundown, hands cut raw from cotton stalks, only to be told you earn nothing. And then you still owed? Imagine feeding children on credit controlled by the same man who cheats you at settlement. That was not miscalculation. That was design. Debt replaced change. A church, a meeting, a spark. On September 30th, 1919, about 100 black farmers gathered at a church near Elaine. They joined the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America. They were pooling money to hire a lawyer. They posted guards outside, not because they were violent, because they knew. Black people organizing for economic fairness in the South had always been treated like treason. Even today, they still have not paid even the victims, the descendants of these families, they have not paid them reparations. But they paid everybody else reparations. But not these people. And think about it. Think about it. If you knew that there's a slim chance that, you definitely ain't probably gonna make it into heaven, but these people are chosen and they're supposed to have all this luxury stuff and all of this. Would you want to repay them if you knew that? Would you? I mean, the average person? No. No. That's like, I mean, I could see, you know, I could see partially why Tasha K don't want to pay Cardi B. I could see why. I mean, it's not like Cardi B is broke. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not here to discuss whether Tasha is right or wrong. I'm just talking about the money. Like, you already have millions, and so for somebody to, nobody's gonna want to give away their millions to somebody else, like, no, and even in this matter, they're not gonna want to pay us because they know their elite people know what's to come for black folk who have kept the laws of the Most High and have the testimony of Christ. And a lot of you in the church, y'all can't say that. But, there will be a remnant of those who can. But that's why they don't want to pay. They pay everybody else but black folk. And that's why they don't want to pay us, because they know, the ones of us who do make it into the kingdom, they know what's to come for us. So that night, white men approached the church. Shots were fired. No one agrees on who fired first. They probably fired first. But history is painfully clear on what came next. White Arkansas decided it was an insurrection. And once that word was spoken, it unleashed everything. The Elaine Massacre. White mobs formed. Armed posses rode through Phillips County. Federal troops were called in. Black men were hunted in fields. Families were dragged from homes. Houses were burned. The official death toll was minimized, but historians now estimate that well over 100 black people, perhaps more than 200, were killed. Bodies were buried in unmarked graves. Some were thrown into the river. Children were left without fathers, wives without husbands, mothers without sons, and the men who carried out the slaughter went home unpunished, of course. Then came the second violence. Massacre was not enough. Hundreds of black men were arrested. Confessions were beaten out of them. They were whipped, threatened, terrorized until they signed statements they could not read. 12 black men were rushed through trials that lasted minutes. All white juries, defense attorneys who barely spoke. White mobs gathered outside the courthouse to make sure the right verdict came back. Guilty, death. It wasn't justice. It was choreography. A performance where the ending had been written before the curtain rose. Refusal. This is where the story could have ended. It usually did, but something sacred refused to let it. The NAACP stepped in, and a brilliant black Arkansas attorney, Scipio Africanus Jones, carried the weight of those men on his shoulders. He knew the danger. He knew the hostility. He knew the odds. He fought anyway. Through hostile courts, through rejected appeals, through years of obstruction, and finally he carried the case to the United States Supreme Court. The case was called Moore versus Dempsey, and it asks a question. America had never wanted to answer honestly. If a trial is controlled by a mob, is it still a trial? No. See, y'all think y'all have, our founding fathers and, our judicial system is, your judicial system is corrupt. Your judicial system is corrupt. All of your branches of government are corrupt. They've been infiltrated. February 19th, 1923, the Supreme Court ruled that mob-dominated trials violate the Constitution. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote that federal courts have the authority to intervene when state proceedings are poisoned by intimidation. It was a crack in the wall that has stood since Reconstruction. For one of the first times, the highest courts in the land acknowledged what Black America had always known. A courtroom can be just as deadly as a lynching tree, and if the law becomes a weapon, someone must step in. The death sentences were overturned. The men were eventually freed, not because Arkansas felt remorse, but because Black resistance would not surrender. The weight and the gift. More than 100 Black people were murdered for asking for fair pay. Their names are not widely taught. Their graves are not marked with the honor they deserve, but their suffering reshaped constitutional law. Whoop-de-doo. Thanks for reshaping constitutional law, but where's the justice for these people? And I know some white folk somebody out there gonna hear me. And they're gonna know it's true. Your people never paid for their sins. Never. They never paid for what they've done. All of this is documented. That this is what happened. And still, even to this day, still no justice. So, in judgment, a lot of you are, that's why I said it's a very small remnant. Every time federal courts step in to protect a defendant from a sham proceeding, the echo of Moore versus Dempsey is there. Every time the 14th Amendment is invoked against state injustice, Elaine stands in the background. They were sharecroppers. They did not set out to make legal history. They just wanted dignity. And from that dignity came a precedent that strengthened justice for generations. Why this still burns. When people ask why Black communities just distrust the legal system, Elaine answers. When people ask why organizing for economic justice is often met with backlash, Elaine answers. When you all make stupid ass comments, and talk about how Black people should, create our own this and create our own that, Elaine answers. Lake Lanier, Oscarville, Seneca Village. Seneca Village was now Central Park. They answer. Black Wall Street, Tulsa, answers. When people ask why Black history carries both trauma and triumph in the same breath, Elaine answers. The sharecroppers gathered in the church because they believed they deserved better. Arkansas tried to silence that belief with bullets and death sentences, but the belief survived. It survived torture, it survived sham trials, it survived mass graves. It reached the highest court in the land and forced America to look at itself. That is the through line of our history. We are attacked for demanding dignity. We are punished for organizing. We are silenced. And still, somehow, God, the Most High, is the somehow. We rise with precedent in our hands. They tried to bury the story in 1919, but the Constitution carries their fingerprints. And as long as we speak their struggle aloud, injustice never gets the last word. See their face.
The freedom of the woman and blacks will be given. Women are given great dignity in Islam, and the blacks have been oppressed in the United States. Great injustice was done unto them. They were under pressure in the United States. Thus they came here. We are doing this owing to the tenets of Islam. In return, we ask nothing for their freedom.
So, I know I'm talking about Happy White History Month, but because of where we are at, I have to share this. Now, I want to say this is coming from Black Journals. They have 130,000 views already, and so, like I said, I'm going to share their content. I'm not claiming this as my own. You see where you can go, check them out. This is my first time ever coming across this channel. I've never seen this channel before, and so, but this is important. Through my videos, I have talked about Islam. I have talked about the Arab slave trade, probably not in the, I haven't went into the depths as, these people probably have, but I did let it be known that there's an Arab slave trade that existed prior to the transatlantic slave trade. I talked about this in my videos about Islam. So I have talked about this in the past. Look, this is my channel. Look, look, 140 million victims of the Islamic slave trade. So I talked about this a year ago, but I did not go into the depths that these people probably went into. But this was my truth about Islam video. So again, this is the title of the video, and this is where you can go, Black Journals. You can go to see them.
Right now, your timeline is split in two. Half the people you know are cheering for Israel. The other half are defending Iran. Everybody has picked a side. Everybody has...
Not everybody, because... And I'm fair use. Not everybody, because I might interject. Everybody ain't picked a side. See, the Black Israelites, yes, we're going to give commentary on this, but as far as I'm concerned, my name ain't Bennett. My name is Bennett. I ain't in it. So this has nothing to do, with, Black people. But I'm glad that this exists to show you how, yes, even though Iran has freed Black people, and they do recognize, that we have been oppressed in America, but in their past, they have also oppressed, quote unquote, Black people too. And I say quote unquote because all of the people that were taken over there were not Negro. All of the people that were taken to Iran were not Negro. Yes, they're Black. See, and this is why I don't like to use the term Black. Because Black, see how I look at Black. Black represents the continent of Africa. Black people come from Africa, quote unquote. But see, Africa itself has 52, I think 52 countries. It's either 52 or 54 countries. And they have over 1,500 different dialects. Even though we are all Black, like for instance, Negroes and Ethiopians, we look the same. We are not the same bloodline. Negroes are not Ethiopians, and Ethiopians are not Negroes. Ethiopians come from the sons of Ham. They come from Cush. Negroes, we come from Shem. So, when it gets to talking about, like how some people from the eastern coast of Africa was taken over to Iran, some of those were the children of Ham. Some of them were Hamites that they took over there. Yes, we were taken too. See, we do share that as black people, but when you dive down into it, you will see the bloodlines are different. There's a difference between the Negro and the authentic African. Authentic Africans are your Ethiopians, who are Cush, Put, who is Libya, Mizraim, who is Egypt, and not the Arabs or the white. I'm talking about Kemet, the original black Egyptians that are now in Sudan. See, they took them and put them in Sudan. One of their curses for doing what they did to the children of Israel would be, they would be removed and they would be sold into slavery, for their part in oppressing Israel. But there is a difference in the bloodlines. Yes, I do not deny we all are black people. But what black people, Negroes, and specifically, they don't understand is that, first of all, sub-Saharan Africa didn't come until the mid 20th century. It might even be 19th, but I'm thinking it's the 20th century was when it rolled around. Before then, there was no term called sub-Saharan African. But places like Liberia, Nigeria, Ghana, the Gold Coast, sub-Saharan Africa, and Negroes, we are and American Negroes, we are the same people. We are the same people. The Ethiopians, the Libyans, the Canaanites, and the Egyptians, and I'm talking about Kemet, not them Arabs, they are the same people. Okay? Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Black people, Negroes, include the ones in America and the ones, in sub-Saharan Africa. Your Igbo, your Ashanti, your Limba, the Benin, Yoruba. Those people, we're all Negro. We're black, but we are all Negro. We are the same people. Bloodline. We're the same people. We are different from the Ethiopians and the Libyans. And I know people don't like to hear that, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Yes, we are all black people, but you cannot deny that the bloodlines are different because we come from 2 different brothers. Okay? And the Canaanites, they were never given any land. Okay? And Ham uncovered his father's nakedness, which is why Canaan was cursed. And I tell you what that means in my previous videos. I talk about that and, why Canaan was the only one that was cursed and the other sons wasn't. Canaan didn't come from the same mother that that like Put and Cush and Mizraim. All 3 of them had one mama. Canaan had another mama. Canaan was the one that was cursed. Canaan wasn't given any land. They squatted They squatted on that land. You have to read the lost books of the Bible, the book of Jubilees, the book of Jasher. You have to read those books to get that information. But let me go on and play this video.
An opinion, but I have one question that neither side wants you to ask. How do they treat black people? Not in speeches, not in propaganda, not in what they say to the cameras. How do they actually treat black people who live in their countries, walk their streets, and exist under their laws? Because I went deep on both Iran and Israel. What I found should make every black person watching this rethink everything they have been told about this conflict. Because neither side, and I mean neither side, has clean hands. Before we go further, subscribe to this channel. This is part of our ongoing series covering the Iran war from the angle the mainstream media refuses to touch. Hit the bell so you do not miss a single.
Now I'm going to tell you right here, right now, fair use, like I said, fair use. I'm going to tell you right here, right now. So, Iran, yeah, they might have took part in the Islamic slave trade, but Iran didn't steal our identity. It's a difference. Iran didn't steal our identity. Yeah, they had some of us in slavery. They did. But they did not steal our identity. So, those imposters, they're already the worst, but I already know that. So
video, and let's get into it. Let's start with Iran, and let's start with something that most people, including most black Americans, have never heard. Iran has a black population, not visitors, not tourists, not temporary workers. There are Afro-Iranians, black people who have lived in Iran for centuries. They are concentrated primarily in the southern provinces along the Persian Gulf, in cities like Bandar Abbas, Hormozgan, and in the regions bordering the Gulf of Oman. Estimates vary, but researchers have placed the number anywhere from several 100,000 to over 2 million people, depending on how you define the community and how far back you trace the lineage. And the origin of that community is slavery. The Persian slave trade, which overlapped heavily with the Arab slave trade, brought East African people to Iran over a period spanning more than 1,000 years. From the 7th century onward, enslaved Africans were transported from the coasts of what are now Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Ethiopia, and Sudan into the Persian Gulf region.
Yes, and so so like our people in Kenya, that's why I said some of our people was caught up in that, but like this, when they get to talking about like people in Sudan and stuff like that in East Africa, those were not our people. They are black people, but they are not Negro. Okay? Hopefully you can catch what I'm saying. They were black people, but black is a color. It doesn't tie you to a land. It doesn't tie you to a race. It's a color.
They were used as laborers, domestic servants, pearl divers, soldiers, and in agricultural work in some of the most brutal conditions imaginable. If you watched our video on the Arab slave trade, and over 150,000 of you did, you already know that this was one of the longest and least discussed slave trades in human history. It predated the transatlantic slave trade by centuries and continued well into the 20th century. Iran did not formally abolish slavery.
In some parts, it's still continuing. In some parts, it is still going on, especially with children, young kids, young black boys and girls. Just like over here, there's a problem. Over there, there's a problem as well. Another characteristic of the curses of Deuteronomy 28:15-68.
Until 1929. Even after abolition, the social consequences never disappeared. Today, Afro-Iranians live in a state of invisibility. They are among the poorest communities in the country. They hold almost no political power. Their cultural traditions, rooted in African music, spiritual practices, and oral history, are marginalized. They are rarely represented in Iranian media, education, or public life. When researchers and journalists have attempted to document their existence, they have been met with resistance from Iranian authorities who would prefer the world did not know this community exists at all. The racism Afro-Iranians face is structural and deeply embedded. The Farsi language itself contains derogatory terms for black people that are still in common use. Colorism is rampant across Iranian society, with darker skin being associated with poverty, low social status, and undesirability. Afro-Iranian women in particular face compounded discrimination, marginalized for their race, their gender, and their economic status simultaneously. And here is something that connects directly to the war happening right now. The southern provinces where most Afro-Iranians live are among the most neglected regions in the entire country. While Tehran poured resources into its military and nuclear programs, these communities were left without adequate schools, hospitals, infrastructure, and economic opportunity.
Now, it's the same way with Dimona, Israel. They allowed black Hebrew Israelites to be accepted into the land, and they put them near a nuclear reactor in Dimona, Israel. And so, I heard that was recently blown up too. But this spirit is even over there. That's how you know that this is spiritual. And this is all linked to Deuteronomy 28.
The Iranian regime spent billions on missiles and proxy wars across the Middle East. Meanwhile, the descendants of enslaved Africans living within their own borders were treated as if they did not exist. Some Afro-Iranian activists have spoken publicly about this. The response from the regime was predictable: surveillance, intimidation, and silence. The protests that erupted across Iran in late 2025 and early 2026 included voices from these communities. And when the government began killing protesters, thousands of them, you can be certain that the lives in those southern provinces were not the ones Tehran was concerned about protecting. So that is Iran, a country with a black population born from slavery, maintained in poverty, and erased from public consciousness. A country that has never acknowledged, apologized for, or made any attempt to repair the damage done to its Afro-descendant community. Now let's cross the border into Israel and
Now, I have to say this, because I have to play the advocate. And I ain't gonna say who for that name, but I'm playing the advocate. Now, some of them over there, they will tell you, Negroes, oh, you, Benny Yaqub, Benny Yaqub, they will tell you that who you come from. But see, a lot of our people being so ignorant, we don't know who Benny Yaqub is, or Benny Yaqub. We don't know who that is, because we just think we black. Bani Yaqub translate from Arabic to mean children of Jacob or sons of Jacob. It is often used in Islamic and historical context to refer to the descendants or followers of the prophet Yaqub, Jacob, who is a reverend patriarch in Abrahamic religions. So Bani Yaqub, or Benny Yaqub, because some people, I've heard both. Seriously, I've heard both. They will tell you this. Now, continuing on in this video, and like I said, fair use. Look, we're gonna cross into Israel, but I want you to hear something. I want you to hear something that this brother says, and then I got a question for you.
For or made any attempt to repair the damage done to its Afro-descendant community. Now let's cross the border into Israel and buckle up, because this is where it gets even more disturbing. Israel markets itself to the world as the only democracy in the Middle East, a homeland for the Jewish people, a nation built on the promise of belonging. But if you are a black Jew in Israel, that promise has a very different meaning. There are roughly 170,000 Ethiopian Jews living in Israel today, a community known as Beta Israel. Their connection to Judaism stretches back thousands of years. According to their own tradition, they descend from the tribe of Dan, one of the original 12 tribes of Israel. They maintain Jewish practice, ritual, and identity for centuries in isolation in the Ethiopian highlands, long before modern Israel existed.
Okay, so let's go back, because I want you to hear this. I want you to hear this again.
A homeland for the Jewish people, a nation built on the promise of belonging. But if you are a black Jew in Israel, that promise has a very different meaning. There are roughly 170,000 Ethiopian Jews living in Israel today, a community known as Beta Israel. Their connection to Judaism stretches back thousands of years. According to their own tradition, they descend from the tribe of Dan, one of the original 12 tribes of Israel. They maintain Jewish practice, ritual, and identity for centuries in isolation in the Ethiopian highlands, long before modern Israel existed. But if you are a black Jew in Israel, that promise has a very different meaning. There are roughly 170,000 Ethiopian Jews living in Israel today, a community known as Beta Israel. Their connection to Judaism stretches back thousands of years. According to their own tradition, they descend from the tribe of Dan, one of the original 12 tribes of Israel. They maintain Jewish practice, ritual, and identity for centuries in isolation in the Ethiopian highlands, long before modern Israel existed.
Okay, so you have the Ethiopian Jews, right? The guy says that and hey, I'm not doubting anything that the brother said about these people, and I'm not doubting anything that they say about themselves, because you know what? They're telling the truth. So that's all, so please don't think that, I'm questioning their validity or anything like that. That's not what we're doing here. I'm trying to get you to open your mind and think. Look at these people. Look at this man. This don't look like a black man to you? This don't look like a black man to you? That don't look like a black man? His son got a big ass head. Okay? But, baby, they say they come from the tribe of Dan, right? Okay. So, we know that Dan was one of the original 12 tribes. We know that. Dan fell off because Dan fell into idol worship. Okay? Now, if these people are saying that they come from Dan, and these people have the same skin complexion as me, well, and even if you take me out of it, like, these people have this color skin complexion, right? These people, they were brothers. They were brothers. The 12 tribes of the 12 sons of Jacob, they were brothers. They might have had different mamas, some of them, but the bloodline is passed down through the man, according to the Torah, according to the Bible. That's another way you know that those people that are claiming to be Israelites are imposters, because they trace their ancestry on their mother's side. And that is contradictory to the Torah. I've always pointed that out. If these people have this skin color, wouldn't the other brothers have this skin color or a similar skin color to this? It damn sure wouldn't be this on the bottom. It damn sure wouldn't be this. Okay? These people right here on the top, on the top left, they look like these people. Now look at these people. Look at these people at the top. They look alike. These people look different. And how do they all come from one? They all come from one tribe. They all come from just one tribe, Judah. And then they reject the Messiah that was prophesied to come from the tribe that they say that they come from. Now, Tucker Carlson just posed the question to Mike Huckabee, talking about, why don't we do DNA testing? Okay? And so these people cannot blot us out, because the Ethiopian, quote unquote, Ethiopian Jews who are black and they look like black people. I got cousins with you seen the size of this baby's head? That baby's head, I got cousins that with heads like that, okay? I got cousins like that. So we come with big ass heads too. But here we are also, you can't forget the Limba people, because the Limba people are also said to come from the tribe of Dan. But see, the DNA, the culture, everything is here. These predate those people that are in Israel right now. Okay? And when you do the research, you're going to find out that the Igbo, the Limba, the Ashanti, black people, Negroes, we come from these people. These were sought out tribes. They knew who they were going to get to enslave. They knew it. So people just don't want to connect the dots. They don't want to connect the dots. Look, some accounts suggest that other Southern African Bantu groups, such as sections of the Zulu, may have had historical intermingling with tribes like Dan. No, baby. These people are the 12 tribes of Israel. That's what you're going to come to find out. These people are the real Jews.
If you are a black Jew in Israel, that promise has a very different meaning. There are roughly 170,000 Ethiopian Jews living in Israel today, a community known as Beta Israel. Their connection to Judaism stretches back thousands of years. According to their own tradition, they descend from the tribe of Dan, one of the original 12 tribes of Israel. They maintained Jewish practice, ritual, and identity for centuries in isolation in the Ethiopian highlands, long before modern Israel existed. In the 1980s and the 1990s, Israel launched dramatic operations Operation Moses, Operation Joshua, and Operation Solomon to airlift Ethiopian Jews out of Ethiopia and Sudan. Thousands were brought to Israel in what was presented to the world as a heroic rescue, a Jewish state bringing its lost people home. But what happened after they arrived tells a very different story. Ethiopian Jews were placed in absorption centers that functioned more like holding facilities. They were subjected to a process of cultural erasure. Their religious practices, which had been maintained for millennia, were deemed insufficient.
But why were their religious practices deemed insufficient? Why? I'm going to show you why. See, you really don't need, which is the history and all of that is good. But if you know your Bible, if you know your word, this is why. 2 Kings 17 verse 24. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, from Cutha, from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim. Who is that? Sepharvaim. What does it sound like? Sephardic. And placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. Instead of who? So right there is letting you know that the children of Israel is one people and the Sepharvaim is another people. Now the Sephardic, they are Semitic. They come from Esau. That's why it's less of them than those ashy nasty people. Because they're a small percentage that come from Esau. So they are Semitic, but those ashy nasties are not. And those ashy nasties, those are the two people that I had on the screen before this. That's where they come from. The white ones, when you see them like that, dressed in all black, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. If we skip down to verse 31, and the Avites made Nibhaz and Tartak, and the Sepharvites burnt their children in fire to those two names, the gods of the Sepharvaim, the Sephardic, which this is letting you know right here, they don't have the same God. They don't believe in the same God. The God that you claiming to believe in when you go to church on Sunday, you sending them pews to my black Christians, they don't believe in the same, those Jewish people, they don't believe in the same God that you believe in. It's giving you the names of their gods right here in the scriptures. You see the scriptures is right here. You can open up your Bible and see the same stuff. So this is what they was doing. They feared the Lord and served their own gods after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from thence. So when they brought the real people back, which is them people should have never went back because it was a scam, and we see that it was. But it was a scam because the Most High is not doing this. The Most High was prophesied to bring his people back into the land, and that's after, Christ comes back. There has to be a cleansing over there. And so now, today, they're telling them people, to leave, because if they don't, they're going to be sacrificed, and that's what's going to happen. Those people are going to be sacrificed in that land. And this is still Happy White History Month because this was all started by I had to lead the scriptures before I started cussing. This is all started by a cave dwelling Neanderthal, sunburnt, genetic skin, mutated, degenerate, cave monkey lip having ass, shitty booty, diaper wearing ass man that's a devil, the son of the devil, by the name of Dump. Donald J. Dump. Because that's what he is, a dump. And he is related. These are the same people. These two right here and Dump, they the same people. Tucker Carlson, same people as these people. Mike Huckabee, same people. These is all the same people. They all come from Esau. Well, you know, Japheth mixed with Esau, with, you know, so that's how they come into the picture. Okay, so you see the video at the bottom here, very bottom, Savage Point of View, Negro Land, and other things. So, I'm sorry, actually it starts from here. So, Savage Point of View, 424 pages on the hidden history of colored people. So starting with this video and going up, all the way up, this is me talking about black people, Negroes, and there's some other, like this video, Savage Point of View, a big historical receipt, that's talking about some other people and proving some things that are not true about other people, a big event that happened in history. And so, and one of their own is going to talk about it. But look, this is all starting to see Negro Land starting up. This is talking about, but when I say black people don't care about their history, this is talking about Septimius Severus right here. Black Roman Emperor. I have some other stuff, some other topics as well. But let me see, right here, starting at Happy Juneteenth, my ass. This video that's at the bottom right here and all the way up. I'm literally telling you how black people are the Israelites, showing you proof, showing you the proof of our Exodus route, taking you through all the history that I have been sharing on Facebook for the past 10 plus years now. And so yeah, check that out. That's why I'm not going no further in that video, because it's like, then what have I been doing? All right, so let's get back to where we was. Nice branch off, but let's get back to the lesson here, to the list. And so we talked about Elaine, Arkansas, then we branched off. And so I'm going to come back to Black Past and read what they have to say. Because like I said, I will read something on Facebook, but then I'll read something on here, because usually it gives, you know, sometimes it gives more, or it just gives a different, you know, version of what happened. And you might find, you know, out something different versus like what you will see me read on social media. So, Elaine, Arkansas riot, 1919. Oh yeah, before I go on with that, yeah, I need to play this. I've shared these pictures so many times. This is just from a video. I could really go digging and showing you the dates and the receipts, but why paint the peacock? It's here. You can go dig if you want to. Oh, I'm sorry. I had some more pictures that I wanted to show. I've shared these pictures before, but look, Black Iraqis, original Arabs. Look, dark. See? This right here. This was before Alexander the Fool. Look at this man. That man is an Arab. Look, black American. These look like some of your uncles. That's how the Iranians look too. The first ones. So, Ham, Shem, and Japheth were all dark. They were all dark-skinned. See? The wood, Christianity. See, that's that. See right here? This is what they be sticking their head into. They call that the female opening, the female vagina. The proof is in the pudding. Yep. So I've been showing these pictures for quite some time now. Alright, one of the last major riots of the Red Summer of 1919, the so-called race riot in Elaine, Arkansas, was in fact a racial massacre. Though the exact numbers are unknown, it is estimated that over 200 black Americans were killed, along with 5 whites, during the white hysteria of a pending insurrection of black sharecroppers. The violence, terror, and concerted effort to drive black Americans out of Phillips County, Arkansas, was so jarring that Ida B. Wells, a founder of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, published a short book on the riot in 1920. So, Ida B. Wells, yeah, she was one of the founders of the NAACP, but anytime I talk about the NAACP, you got to understand, like, it was a scam. It was a scam. They had the same people who financed the civil rights, the Jewish people. They financed the NAACP. One of their top award is still named after a Jewish person. So that lets you know right there, because they want to be the ones to be able to give an award, or they want to have prestige, which names the top award after them versus after one of the founders, and so yeah, she was a founder, but she left too, because she felt that the NAACP wasn't taking quick enough action, and action that she wanted to see happen, which is not a bad thing. I'm not shaming her or anything like that. What I'm saying is that those Jewish people, they their goal was to bring these black people who were the quote unquote founders of the NAACP together, right? But it wasn't for their best interest or the interest of their people. It was all to make themselves, look good, and it was all a big plot to accept other, minorities. And when I'm talking about other minorities, now I'm talking about white women, and then, of course, their people as well. But, you can't be the minority and you own mostly everything, too, at the same point in time. But anyway, to me, it was a scam and that's why she left. And when I say she left, I'm talking about she left that same year. Started in 1909, she left in 1909. Grand opening, grand closing. But they didn't close, but just like with Martin Luther King towards the end, he started to see the plot. She saw it too. She vamped. Like, oh, so y'all using it's just like today, now today we have terms like intellectual property and, and stuff like that. That the people that's behind the organization, the Jewish people, wanted to use her intellectual property. And meanwhile, it's like Popeye's chicken. They got you thinking that, oh yeah, these black people is, yeah, they the founders, but behind the scenes, the people who actually financed it. It's just like if you go into a toy aisle and you find your toy and then you turn around and give it to your parents who's gonna buy it. Yeah, you found it. But who bought it? Who purchased it? Who spent the money to get it started? Because if it was black funded and paid for by black folk, there would be no their prestigious award, it would not be named after a Jewish person. It wouldn't be. These people are behind the scenes. They still do stuff like, to this day they behind, you'll see some of them behind, back in BLM, they got ties, with these people, they fund both sides. That's what they've done throughout history. And so, yes, she was a founder, and it opened in 1909, but she left that same year. Webb Du Bois even left in 1934, and I mean it was due, to rifts over segregation. So yeah, in the foreground, is this, these black faces, but behind the scenes, it's conflicts. It's conflicts because the people with the money, the people who has the money and who's the funding and all of that, they have different views from a Webb Du Bois and different views from an Ida B. Wells on certain issues. And that's what them folks was coming to find out. I'm not saying that it hasn't done great work for black people or, great things for black people. I'm not saying that. It hasn't. But so has Ellen DeGeneres, and we see she fake as hell too. But, long as they got to keep the white folks, like Mary White Ovington, because she was white and she stayed. Right? Right. Oh, okay.
P was founded and received. Yes, the NAACP was founded and received significant funding from Jewish Americans. Jewish figures like Joel and Arthur Spingarn and Henry Moskowitz provided critical funding, legal expertise, and leadership, contributing to the civil rights movement.
Oh, okay. Moving on, it was also widely reported in Black American newspapers like the Chicago Defender and generated several public campaigns to address the fallout. On the night of September 30th, 1919, approximately 100 black Americans, mostly sharecroppers on the plantations of white landowners, attended a meeting of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America at a church in Hoop Spur, a small community in Phillips County, Arkansas. They hoped to organize to obtain better payments for their cotton crops. Aware of white fears of communist influence on blacks, the Union posted armed guards around the church to prevent disruption and infiltration. During the meeting, 3 white men pulled up to the front of the church. One of the men asked the guards, "Going coon hunting, boys?" Gunfire erupted after the guards made no response. Though sharp debates exist as to who fired first, the guards killed W.A. Atkins, a security officer from the Missouri Pacific Railroad, and injured Charles Pratt, the deputy sheriff. The next morning, an all-white posse went to arrest the suspects. Though they encountered little opposition from the black community, the fact that blacks outnumber whites 10-1 in this area of Arkansas resulted in great fear of an insurrection. But this is all on their part, because they little fragile white male egos. And it's like they do all this projecting on, I'm talking about white men, they do all this other projecting on other people, right? But it's the whole time they're the ones acting feminine, complaining like a bitch. Everything that they trying to put on others is what they do. It's crazy. The concerned whites formed a mob numbering up to 1,000 armed men, many of whom came from the surrounding counties and as far away as Mississippi and Tennessee. Upon reaching Elaine, the mob began killing blacks and ransacking their homes. As word of the attack spread throughout the black American community, some black residents fled while others armed themselves in defense. The mob then turned its attention to disarming those blacks who fought back. Meanwhile, local white newspaper further inflamed tensions by reporting that there were planned black uprising. And so we learned from previous videos when I showed you the missing puzzle piece in the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre, which is, I'm going to play the video again on another video coming up here because I'll be talking about the Tulsa massacre. But we see who owned the newspapers even back at that time.
Why don't more people know about the Elaine massacre? It's one of the deadliest acts of violence against black people in U.S. history. In September 1919, about 100 black farmers gathered for a union meeting just north of Elaine, Arkansas, to seek fairer prices for their crops. White leaders reacted with violence. Across 4 days, white mobs chased black men, women, and children, massacring them.
He said they killed so many black people that the blood ran through the streets like water.
So why don't more people know about this? The narrative and flow of information was controlled by the white press, a narrative that still persists today.
I know that in Elaine, I saw a short story that ran in a newspaper that said, "Keep quiet, go back to work," after that massacre occurred. So there were real efforts to keep these stories about these massacres out of the public.
Coverage of the massacre by the black and white presses did not tell the same story.
This trope of blacks are rising up to kill their white neighbors comes up, and it kind of with the white press, because there are more white publications and they do interact with one another across state lines.
The white account described the massacre as an uprising that needed to be squashed. This version spread far and wide through the Associated Press and other news wires, becoming the historical record.
Who has the power though to fuel those? Who's been in control of the media? Who? You think them was just white folks? See, they know how to weave and they know how to bob and weave throughout narratives, man. They know when to play that white, oh, we're white, and then they know when to play that, oh, we're Jewish. They know when to interchange, man. And this is how I've been telling white people, hey, happy White History Month. This is how you were thrown under the bus. This is how you were thrown under the bus. You see, these was lies. These were lies. And it spread. Who has the power to do that? It wasn't black folk. And you white folk was busy gathering yourselves. The white folks that did it.
For white Americans. The perspectives of black victims were reported only by the black press and have been passed down by the descendants of the massacre.
The trauma of these events echoes down through the generations.
And my grandmother stood up on the railroad track and watched them haul the bodies out and down there in trucks. They had bodies laying all around the field.
Historians say if you were to sum it up with one word, it would be greed, it would be envy, it would be a murderous rage to keep the sharecroppers from organizing a union to get better prices for their cotton.
Ida B. Wells Barnett, a crusading black journalist, discovered the violence began because of a dispute over what black farmers should be paid for cotton. The crop's value skyrocketed during World War I, but attempts by black farmers to unionize and sell their crops for higher prices were treated as a threat. Wells Barnett describes in the Arkansas Race Riot that the violence began because Negroes were in a fair way to become independent, and it was not to the interest of the white landowner.
Do you notice how we were called Negroes back then? Not African American, called Negroes.
To let them do so. Describes in the Arkansas Race Riot that the violence began because Negroes were in a fair way to become independent, and it was not to the interest of the white landowners to let them do so. The impacts of the massacre continue to haunt Black Lane residents.
I think that everything that we see, from the decay of the town to population decline, all of these things, the racial tensions, I think a lot of that stuff bred from Elaine.
In other words, we trusted quote-unquote archival record and the written record, but that record was often created by people who either perpetrated the massacre or covered it up.
So why did...
What was said?
And the written record, but that record was often created by people who either perpetrated the massacre or covered it up.
So
archival record and the written record, but that record was often created by people who either perpetrated the massacre or covered it up.
So why doesn't everyone know the story of the Elaine massacre? The white press didn't tell it.
By October 2nd, U.S. Army troops arrived in Elaine, and the white mobs began to disperse. Federal troops rounded up and placed several hundred blacks in temporary stockades. Where there were reports of torture, the men were not released until their white employers vouched for them. There was also considerable evidence that many of the soldiers sent to quell the violence engaged in the systematic killing of black residents. In the end, 122 blacks, but no whites, were charged by the Phillips County grand jury for crimes related to the riots. Their court-appointed lawyers did little in their defense, despite the investigation and involvement of the NAACP. The first 12 men tried for the first-degree murder were convicted and sentenced to death. As a result, 65 others entered plea bargains and accepted up to 21 years for second-degree murder, led by black attorney Scipio Africanus Jones. The NAACP and other civil rights groups worked towards retrials and release of the Elaine 12. Eventually, they won their release, with the last of the 12 set free on January 14th, 1925. Yeah, I mean, thank you. Yeah, talk to your people. Yeah, to the ones who formed the NAACP, go talk to your people. Or pay for it. Not the people who they used as the face and left. Okay, so we moving on up to the Harlem Race Riot. And we have the Harlem Race Riot. Of course, always the victim. The Harlem Race Riot of 1935. The Harlem Riot of 1935, the first in New York City in the 20th century, was the consequence of a lingering unemployment crisis and police brutality. At 2:30 p.m. on March 19, 1935, a 16-year-old black Puerto Rican boy named Lino Rivera stole a 10-cent penknife from the Crest 5 and 10 store on 125th Street. Oh, Lord. Why Puerto Rico? Why am I black Puerto Rico? Both the store owner and the assistant manager saw Rivera steal the knife and managed to capture him before he was able to run away. A mounted police officer was called to the scene to investigate. When asked if he wanted to press charges, the store owner instructed the officer to let Rivera go. In order to avoid anxious crowds and excited spectators, the officer took Rivera down through the back entrance of the store and out onto 124th Street. When one of the spectators saw the police officer take Rivera away, she shouted that they were going into the basement to beat Rivera. An ambulance arrived moments later to take care of the store owner and the assistant manager, who suffered scratches and other wounds while trying to tackle Rivera. When the ambulance left the scene empty, many of the spectators assumed that Rivera had been killed. Shortly after the ambulance left, a hearse parked across the street from the store at 124th Street. I'm sorry, I'm not used to those. A hearse parked across the street from the store at 124th Street. Oh my God. Okay. This would be throwing me off though, man. This is what be throwing me off. I mean, okay, I'm gonna read this again. Shortly after the ambulance left, a hearse parked across the street from the store at 124th Street. Okay. When the ambulance left the scene empty, many of the spectators assumed that Rivera had been killed. Shortly after the ambulance left, a hearse parked across the street from the store at 124th Street. Okay. The driver was visiting his brother-in-law, who was inside of the store. Gathering crowds immediately assumed that the hearse was there to haul away the body of Rivera. The police who arrived on the scene attempted to inform the growing crowds that no harm had been done to Rivera. Spectators began to demand that the police bring out Rivera alive, but police officers repelled the crowds and claimed that this was none of their business. At 5:30 p.m., the store on 125th Street was closed, and New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia urged the residents of Harlem to remain calm. The closing of the store did little to stop the anger of the crowd, and word spread across into Harlem that a boy had been mistreated by the police. Groups organized by the Young Communist League and a black group called the Young Liberators mounted a demonstration that drew thousands of people. When a white member of the Young Communist League was introduced and stood up to speak, an object was thrown through the window of the store, and police responded by arresting the speaker and attempting to disperse the crowd. The crowd reorganized across the street, and another speaker tried to address the group from a lamppost perch. The police arrested him as well on the charge of unlawful assemblage. The crowds began to gather in greater numbers along 125th Street and soon spread to other areas in Harlem. As the sun set, the looting and window smashing began. Police attempted to stop the crowds by circulating photographs of Revere alive, but this fueled rumors that the photographs were fake. The rioting ended the next day when New York Governor Herbert Lehman announced to Harlem's white shop owners that city officials had the situation under control. Overall, 3 African Americans were killed and nearly 60 were injured. 75 people, mostly blacks, were arrested by the police. The riot caused over $200 million in property damage. This is the Houston Mutiny of 1917. Looks like Operation Send in the Darky, huh? Houston Mutiny of 1917. By the time the U.S. entered World War I, black soldiers, who I want to let it be known, was they joke about it, right? Operation Send in the Darky.
Our sources have told us that the Canadians are preparing for our invasion, so we must use caution. Each battalion has a specific code name and mission. Battalion 5, raise your hands. You will be the all-important first attack wave, which we will call Operation Human Shield. Hey, wait a minute. Now keep in mind, Operation Human Shield will suffer heavy losses. Battalion 14, right, you are Operation Get Behind the Darkies. You will follow Battalion 5 here, and try not to get killed, for God's sake. Are there any questions, men? Are there any questions, men? Yes, Soldier.
Have you ever heard of the Emancipation Proclamation?
I don't listen to hip-hop.
Ain't that about a bitch? Isn't that does ring true today? Because, see, all this stuff, Constitution, democracy, and patriotism, and emancipation, and all of this stuff, right? They only care about this stuff when they are using it against us. They don't care about this stuff. You have a dictator in office right now. And now all of a sudden, they're introducing a bill to seek to where he can have a third term. All this stuff, this man set up and lied about everything. Like he set up and lied to y'all face. Lied to your face. Lied to your face. You maggots. He lied to your face about everything. Said he wasn't seeking a third term. Oh, Project 25. I don't know what that is. He lied. Everything he did was a lie. From them trying to shoot him and everything, all of that was propaganda. This has been nothing but a movie in the Bible playing out right before our eyes. But see, these people, see, this is Judah. This is Judah. That's Judah. This is why wars are won. Because the Lord is a man of war, and he is going to back his people. That's why these men were the power behind the U.S. Army. That's why the U.S. Army was so great, because it had Judah in it. This is Judah. If you go back in some of my previous videos, I've read from the patriarch Judah and how he was and how strong he was, how powerful he was, how fast he was. His descendants are still this today. His descendants, Judah, his descendants, they're still this today. By the time the U.S. entered World War I, black soldiers and white Texas civilians had a history of hostile relations dating back more than 50 years. At Camp Logan, men with the 3rd Battalion of the 24th U.S. Infantry Regiment faced increasing harassment from Houston authorities. Couldn't even serve the country and be in peace. Nah, they had to deal with the authorities who was jealous because they couldn't take their asses out into war, or wouldn't, or was too scary to go. So when these brave men come back, oh yeah, we got to make sure that, because we're the authority around here. If you such an authority, then take your ass out into that battlefield then. If you such an authority. These old men is the one who create the wars, and you young men is the ones who die in them. Remember that. Can't even serve the country in peace. On August 23rd, 1917, a rumor reached the camp that Corporal Charles Baltimore had been killed for interfering with the detention and interrogation of a black woman by Houston police. In fact, Baltimore had been beaten but survived and was later released. Reacting to the rumor and to racial discrimination, about 150 black troops marched for 2 hours through Houston. As local whites armed themselves, a violent confrontation ensued that claimed the lives of 4 black soldiers and 15 local residents, and wounded a dozen others. The soldiers' leader, Sergeant Vida Henry, killed himself after the death of a National Guardsman whom the troops had mistaken for a policeman. The group subsequently fell into disarray and the violence dissipated. In November, the largest court-martial in U.S. military history convened at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio to try 63 soldiers from the 3rd Battalion. 13 of the convicted men were executed by hanging on December 11th. The following year, two additional courts-martial were held and another 16 sentenced to hang. Responding to pressure from black leaders, President Woodrow Wilson commuted the death sentences of 10 of the condemned men. In total, nearly 60 soldiers received life imprisonment for their roles in the affair. The Houston Mutiny anticipated the Red Summer Riots of 1919, in which many African American servicemen retaliated against white mistreatment. On the other hand, because of the mutiny, the 24th Infantry Regiment was not allowed by the U.S. War Department to go to France to fight in World War I.
Yes, African Americans fought in World War I. Over 380,000 served in the U.S. Army, with many deployed to Europe. While some were in support roles, thousands fought in combat.
including the famous 369th Infantry Regiment, also known as the Harlem Hellfighters.
Oh, okay. 24th Infantry Regiment, 1866 through 1951. This was not on the list, but, let's talk about it. This is what makes me one of one. This is definitely what makes me one of one. There are others who claim, to be into Black history and for, Black people and stuff like that, but I don't see no work. And some might got books out, but it's definitely nothing like what I'm doing. So when you be seeing certain people, that's the watered down version of me. I'm one of one. You can't tell me that you are Black history anything and then say, oh, but I don't believe in the Bible. You are a fool. I don't care how educated you think, I don't care how educated you are. I don't care how much money you got, what you drive, how many homes you are. You cannot tell me that I am into Black history and say I don't believe in the Bible. Especially if you were a gun owner. Oh, so you believe in the white man's gun, but you don't believe at what you perceive is the white man's book, which is it's not. It's our history book. Oh, okay. Next excuse. I haven't found anyone in my community that I come from that is like me. I found watered down versions of me, but I have not found anyone on my level. Anyway, carrying on. When the U.S. Army was reorganized on July 28, 1866, for peacetime service after the American Civil War, 6 regiments were set aside for Black enlisted men. These included 4 infantry regiments, numbered 38 through the 41st. The 24th Infantry was organized during a reduction in March 1869 by merging the 38th and the 41st. Both had served in Texas since their establishment, and the consolidation took place at Fort McCavitt. The regiment's first 4 commanders had rendered distinguished service in the Civil War. They were Colonels Ronald S. McKenzie, November 1869 through December 1870, Abner S. Doubleday, December 1870 through December 1872, Joseph H. Potter, December 1872 through April 1886, and Zenes R. Bliss, April 1866 through April 1885. The regiment remained in Texas until 1880, then served in Native territory between 1880 and 1888. It spent the next 10 years in New Mexico and Utah. Because of the nature of operations against highly mobile natives, the infantry did not participate in as many combat engagements as the cavalry. 2 soldiers, Sergeant Benjamin Brown and Corporal Isaiah Mays, received the Medal of Honor for bravery against bandits during what became known as the Wham Paymaster robbery in Arizona Territory on May 11, 1889. 4 Seminole Negro, let me say it again, 4 Seminole. You know who the Seminole is, right? You know who that is? The Seminole natives. That's the tribe of Reuben. That's the tribe of Reuben. Do you know who the tribe of Reuben is? It's one of the lost 10 tribes, quote unquote 10 tribes. 4 Seminole Negro Scouts received the Medal of Honor while serving with the regiment: Private Pompey Factor, Private Adam Payne, Trumpeter Isaac Payne, and Sergeant John Ward. The 24th served in more civil disputes than other black regiments. Elements were garrisoned in a temporary camp in western Wyoming after the anti-Chinese riots of 1885. I'm going to copy that because I don't think I have that on the list, but they later followed the march of Coxey's army in the west. The regiment protected mine property along with the 25th in labor disputes involving the Western Federation of Miners in Idaho and Montana during the 1890s, notably in the Courier d'Alene, Idaho Mining War of 1892, and at Wardner, Idaho in 1899, where it guarded arrested strikers. The 24th also served in coal mine disputes in New Mexico in 1920. Like other black regiments, the 24th went to Cuba in 1898. The unit fought at San Juan Hill on July 4th, losing 11 men killed in action, and served in the Philippines between 1899 and 1902, losing 12 more. David Fagan, the best known of the soldiers who joined the Filipino revolutionary cause, deserted from the regiment on November 24th, 1899. The unit returned to the islands and served there between 1906 and 1908, and between 1912 and 1915. The 24th became the first black regiment to serve in eastern United States when it was stationed at Madison Barracks, New York, between 1908 and 1911. It went to the Mexican border in 1916, staying until 1922 with its headquarters at Camp Furlong, Columbus, New Mexico. The unit operated on both sides of the border. During the summer of 1917, the soldiers of the 3rd Battalion became involved in what is known as the Houston Mutiny and rioted. 18 men were hanged as a result. During World War II, the regiment served in the Pacific from April 1942 until August 1945. Most of the unit spent much of the war as stevedores, but some elements saw combat in New Guinea as part of the 93rd Infantry Division and on Saipan during the final stages of the war. In August 1945, the 24th Regiment became the first and only black unit in World War II to take the surrender of Japanese forces. On August 22nd, an entire garrison of Japanese troops in the Riots Islands surrendered to the unit, including suicide boatmen who had vowed never to surrender to Allied forces. Their surrender came 12 days before representatives of Imperial Japan signed surrender papers on the battleship Missouri before General Douglas MacArthur, thus officially ending the war in the Pacific. On the 24th Infantry occupied Okinawa, Japan after World War II ended, and although President Harry Truman's Executive Order 9981 officially desegregated U.S. military forces in 1948, the 24th remained a predominantly black unit, but now with some black American as well as white officers. In June 1950, they were among the first U.S. troops deployed to Korea Their private first class, William Thompson, stayed at his machine gun and delayed a North Korean advance near Hamon, Korea on August 6, 1950, until his post was overrun and he was killed. He was the first American soldier to receive the Medal of Honor in the Korean War. Sergeant Cornelius Charlton and Private Ray E. Duke of the regiment also received the medal posthumously for bravery in combat in 1951. The unit lost 1/5 of its officers and 1/3 of its enlisted men on November 30th, 1950, when it faced Chinese troops at the Chongchong River in North Korea. On March 6, 1951, some members of the 24th, again facing Chinese troops at the Han River, tossed their weapons and ran away. Although most of the regiment performed well at the Han River, the actions of the deserters caused the unit to be deactivated on October 1st, 1951.
Executive Order 9981, signed by President Truman in 1948, ended racial discrimination in the U.S. Armed Forces. It ensured equal treatment and opportunities for all service members, regardless of their background.
'93, Knoxville Race Riot, 1919. It says the Knoxville Race Riot, 1919. The Knoxville Race Riot in Knoxville, Tennessee was one of several race riots that took place in the Red Summer of 1919. The so-called Red Summer of 1919 was a series of violent riots, predominantly whites against blacks, which lasted from May until October of that year and resulted in an estimated 600 deaths across the nation. The riot began on August 30th, 1919, when the intruder entered the home of Bertie Lindsay, a 27-year-old white woman, and shot her while she was asleep in her bed. The only witness was Lindsay's 21-year-old cousin, Ora Smith, who soon after the intruder left their Knoxville home, stealing a purse on his way out, ran next door to the house of a city policeman. One of the officers investigating the crime scene, Andy White, immediately accused Maurice Mays. Maurice Franklin Mays was a well-known Black American political figure who briefly served as a deputy sheriff in North Knoxville. Afterward, however, Mays spent much of his time gambling, bootlegging, and managing the Strollers Cafe on East Jackson Avenue, located in Knoxville's red light district. Brown chicken, brown, brown. At about 6 months old, Maurice Franklin Mays became the foster child of William Mays, a former slave, and his wife, Frances Mays. Mays' biological father was the white Democratic mayor, John E. McMillan. Ella Walker, Mays' biological mother, worked as McMillan's maid. On August 30th at 3:30 a.m., Andy White, along with two other officers, traveled to Mays' apartment where they found a revolver in his dresser. Soon after, White handcuffed Mays and hauled him over to the crime scene, where Ora Smith identified him as the intruder after barely glancing at Mays. Maurice Franklin Mays was then taken to the Knox County jailhouse. At around 8 a.m. the next morning, angry whites began to congregate near the Knox County jail. A few individuals broke into the jail and searched for Mays. However, he was moved to a jail located in Chattanooga, Tennessee, as a protective measure. No Black American inmates were harmed during their search, but over a dozen white inmates were freed. leading to the pillaging of the liquor storage room and the demolition of the jail. Later that day, the National Guardsmen were notified about several holdups taking place in the black section of Knoxville near Vine Avenue and Central Street by a band of black Americans. Not long after, a detachment was sent to the scene, followed by a mob of white rioters. Although only one business was broken into by black Americans, the white mob raided and destroyed numerous black-owned businesses in the area. Eventually, guardsmen joined the mob, engaging in gunfire with black residents. In the end, hundreds of citizens were wounded and 7 people were killed, 6 blacks and 1 white. The riot prompted many black Americans to flee the city. Although the Knoxville riot of 1919 started as a murder case and not a race riot, in the end, it became one. Maurice Franklin Mays was convicted of the murder of Bertie Lindsay by an all-white jury and sentenced to death on March 15, 1922 in Nashville, Tennessee. Maurice Franklin Mays was pronounced dead after being sentenced to the electric chair. He was 35 years old. Y'all, so we on number 94, I believe. Yeah, we on number 94. And so this is going to be the last riot that I'm going to read about for today, because I have read 9 riots. So I think that's good. Don't you? I think so. So here we go. The Longview, Texas Race Riot, 1919. The Longview Race Riot occurred on July 10th through the 12th in this northeast Texas city where 1,790 black comprised 31% of the town's 5,700 people in 1919. I'm sorry. Yes. The Longview Race Riot occurred on July 10th through the 12th in this northeast Texas city where 1,790 blacks comprised 31% of the town's 5,700 people in 1919. Racial tensions were high across the United States due to race riots that began in March 1919. Just before the Longview riot, the local teacher and newspaper correspondent Samuel L. Jones and Dr. Calvin P. Davis, prominent leaders of the black community, had begun encouraging local black farmers to avoid selling to local white cotton brokers and to instead sell directly to buyers in Galveston. Also, local blacks set up a cooperative store where they competed with and angered local white merchants. These incidents raised tensions in Longview long before the riot occurred. And this is the In early June, a local black man, Lemuel Walters, was beaten by 2 white men for allegedly making romantic advances towards their sister. But see, what I don't get is, in other reports that I read, it said Lemuel was confused because their sister looked just like their father in the face. And so he didn't know whether it was a man, woman, or a goat. He didn't know. And then in some other reports, I heard that their sister was actually not their sister. It was just a made up story. The two brothers, they were brothers, but they drew inspiration from the female ogre that lived in the woods. And they thought that that's what their sister would have looked like if they had a sister. So I mean, it's different, but we're gonna go with this. I'm just letting you know it's different. Walters was arrested and put in the Gregg County Jail, but a mob showed up at the jail on June 17th, and the sheriff gave Walters to the mob, who shot and killed him. The story was printed in the Chicago Defender on July 10th and enraged local whites who blamed the article on Jones, although he denied writing it. Later that day, Jones was attacked and beaten across the street from Gregg County Courthouse by the same man who beat Walters. Dr. Davis arrived in his vehicle and took Jones into his office to treat him. The two men appealed to Mayor Gabrielle Bodenheim for protection, but were instead advised to leave town. Of course, Jones hid with relatives, and they gathered 25 friends to protect his home. Around midnight, a group of white men arrived at Jones' house, but were met with gunfire. 3 of the white men were injured, and another, who hid under a nearby house, was beaten badly by the black defenders of the home. Damn it. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. And you see when they met with the same fucking force that they meet people with, you see they motherfucking ass run and hide like the motherfucking dogs that they smell like. But look, because they can't take an ass whooping. As the word spread, a crowd of almost 1,000 whites began to gather back in town, with some breaking into Welch hardware store to take guns and ammunition. Thieves. These is the rioters and looters. The crowd burned down Jones's home, Dr. Davis' home and office, and a black dance hall. Although Texas Governor William P. Hobby sent 8 Texas Rangers to Longview, the violence continued. On the night of July 12th, Marion Bush, father-in-law of Dr. Davis, was killed by a local white farmer. And it's like, you just think like these people, when it's their time to step into the spotlight, when it's time for their close-up, Mr. DeVille, they'll try to fight like this, but they won't have no power. That's going to be the day that they going to run and hide. They're going to try to run and hide in their bunkers. I'm telling you. And a lot of them going to die in them bunkers. A lot of them going to die in them, they got tunnels under, where they be digging and stuff like that. They got whole cities under the ground. They think they're going to be safe there, and they're not. Which is stupid, because if enough force happens up here on top, where we all at now, what you think is going to happen below? To that little hollowed out area that y'all done dug out. What you think going to happen there? It's going to crumble. It's just like that iron, quote unquote, iron dome that's not so iron. On Sunday, July 13th, Governor Hobby declared martial law in all of Gregg County and ordered all residents of Longview to surrender their weapons at the county courthouse. An estimated 5,000 to 7,000 weapons were turned in, and more soldiers and rangers arrived in town to quell the riots. 17 white men were arrested for attempted murder on July 14th, but all were released, of course. 9 other white men were arrested for arson and then released, of course. None of the men were prosecuted. 21 black men were arrested for assault and attempted murder and moved to an Austin, Texas jail for their safety. Eventually, all were released without trials to avoid any further unrest in Longview. Martial law ended on July 18th, and citizens were allowed to retrieve their firearms the next day. The Longview... What was the point? The Longview race riot was one of 25 riots that took place from May through October 19th during what will be called the Red Summer. Yo, so this is just the first page. So, you see me reading this stuff on this website, but don't play with me. Like I said, I'm one of one. Nah, I might not have anything published, but that don't stop me from, being a writer. And I'm looking for something. So I am looking for something before I let's see. Yeah, nope. So I didn't. That's yeah. So these are the riots. We still have to go over. Okay. Yeah, I didn't come to play. I didn't come to play. That's where we at.
Red Summer of 1919 was a period of intense race riots in over 26 U.S. cities. White mobs attacked black neighborhoods, often targeting returning veterans. These riots, fueled by job competition and housing shortages, resulted in many deaths, including 38 in Chicago and over 100 in Elaine, Arkansas.
See, as you can see, I didn't have some. Like I said, I'm only one person, man, and so, I didn't have this listed. But as I go along and I find stuff that I know that I don't have numbered and listed, I read about it, I research, see what it's about, and this was something that I didn't have wrote down. I didn't have written down, but I wanted to get a little history on it. And even though as a whole, because I'm reading the riots that happened during this time, during the Red Summer, as you can see, the riots that I've been talking about, a few of them have mentioned this Red Summer. So, But overall, this is what it was about. And with that, we is at 3 hours. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell y'all. Auntie said she'll see y'all in the next video. So, she like I said, she got some real bad news and ain't nobody told her nothing. So that's all she kept saying. Nobody told her nothing. Some people she used to know. Y'all keep her in prayer. Keep me in prayer. I keep you in prayer. And thank you for joining me on another installment of Happy White History Month. And just remember, I didn't ask you for a dime, but I do thank you for your time. There will be no collection plate passed around. Don't you like hearing that? No collection plate being passed around. I ain't asking you for no donations. We don't gotta raise nothing to get nothing. Just a video of me, dropping the information, and I ain't asking for nothing but your attention. That's it. That's it. So y'all have a good night. Love y'all.